Good morning, good afternoon, and many thanks for attending this event focused on how we can use labour migration to help Europe achieve its green transition goals. My name is Helen Dempster. I am a policy fellow at the Centre for Global Development, a think tank based in Washington, DC and London, focused on, among many other things, how to maximise the positive impacts of labour migration. We're very excited to be co-hosting this event today with Fragomen, a leading immigration law firm, and an organisation which has been leading the charge in getting employers and governments to think more creatively in this space. We have a really fantastic lineup of speakers for you today. Bianca Valkichova is the policy coordinator for legal migration at the European Commission's DG for Employment. Nina Vahafi is the Global Mobility Immigration Manager for RWE, one of the leading companies in the field of renewable energy. Gemma Hislop is a Director and Solicitor at Fragomen UK. And Benjamin Thomas is a Technical Advisor at GIZ, the German Development Agency. We're also joined by Marius Tollenaire, a partner in Fragomen's Frankfurt office, who will be running our Q&A later. But quickly to set the scene. We know that industries and governments engaged in the green transition across Europe, be it via clean energy investments, house retrofit, are experiencing serious shortages of workers, to the point that this is causing delays in the implementation of policies and projects and increasing costs. For example, the European Employment Services report that across the EU, countries are facing shortages of welders, electricians and construction workers. And in Germany alone, a shortfall of 560,000 green skilled workers is projected by 2035. This is due to a combination of demographic challenges, as well as an insufficient pipeline of skilled trainees coming up through technical and vocational education and training. There is therefore a growing recognition of the importance of labour migration, reflected in an increasing number of migration agreements and pilots organised by both the public and private sectors. So at the Centre for Global Development, over the past 2 years, we've been looking at how to creatively link training and migration to support the green transition. Part of this is looking into these existing agreements and pilots, how they're being used to address skill shortages, what have been some successes and challenges, and how can they best be used to support the green transition in both countries of origin and destination. Our hope is that this work will surface some lessons learned, practical advice for both public and private implementers as to how to expand labour migration for the green transition in a way which is genuinely win-win. We only have an hour to delve into these really exciting topics. So if you're interested in discussing them further, the Centre for Global Development has established a new community of practice on these topics, which will meet every few months. Our next meeting will be in late July and will focus on different financial models to be able to support labour migration for the green transition. If you're interested in joining the community of practice, we'll drop a link in the chat and we'd love to see you at our next meeting. So without further ado, I'd love to move on to some questions to our panel. And again, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us today about these really, really important topics. So I'm going to do this across 3 rounds. The first round is going to focus on shortages. The second round is going to focus on successes and challenges. And the last round will focus on the impact to countries of origin. And we'll finish with a final takeaway round. So firstly, on shortages. We're going to look at shortages in green skilled sectors across the European Union. So of course, I'm going to start today with Bianca. So from your perspective, sitting within the Commission, within DG Employment, where are you seeing the greatest demand for green skilled workers? Do you feel like this demand is consistent across European countries or concentrated in a few specific countries? And how are you seeing this across occupations? So Bianca, over to you.
Hi, Helen, and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for having me on the panel. Let me just start by highlighting or underlining that the green transition remains a top priority for the Commission. And also in context of the new focus on competitiveness, on the full economic potential of Europe, I mean, the green transition remains very much relevant. And it is expected to create also new job opportunities in the future in sectors such as renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure, or in eco-friendly manufacturing. It is estimated that maybe between 1 and 2.5 million additional jobs could be created by 2030 if the accompanying policies are in place. But this, of course, also there are some accompanying challenges to this that are inherent to the demand for these jobs. And that is, on one hand, the skills shortages, so having the right skills for adopting this kind of technology, but also the labor shortages. I mean, of course, we do not have a proper definition of what a labor shortage is, but according to the data that we are collecting across the EU, and a new report from ELA on the US that is collecting the labor shortages and surpluses every year is coming out next week, shows us that the labor shortages in these sectors are steadily increasing. For instance, in the clean tech manufacturing, we know that about 25% of new companies report labor shortages in 2023. And as a result, we need to ensure that the people that we have, that they have the skills that they need and they can use them in the jobs. So when considering these kind of energy intensive sectors today, about 1 in 10 workers really receives the training, which is far too little for what we need for the green transition. And for this, the Commission has adopted the action plan to tackle labor and skill shortages. I can talk about that a bit later. And also this year, we have introduced the Union of Skills, which is a plan to kind of improve the generally education, training, and lifelong learning. And it, the importance of labor migration here comes through the kind of fourth pillar of the Union of Skills, which is focused on attracting and retaining talent from third countries. So I will probably maybe stop here, and then we can touch more in detail on this later.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bianca. So we'll come on to questions specifically about the talent pool that you mentioned in a moment. But could you tell us a little bit about the shortage predictions you were speaking about, how the Commission's been thinking about shortages and how they're feeding into the talent pool's development? Do you feel like policymakers across the EU are aware of and responsive to this issue?
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned just a minute ago, the action plan to tackle labor and skill shortages, this was adopted in March 2024. But of course, shortages have been a topic that come up repeatedly and for many different directions. I think in 2022 it was the word of the year, which is not surprising. And in this action plan, you can see the comprehensive approach from the EU perspective, which means first of all activating the population that is already in the EU. So maybe persons that are not in the labor market. This could be, women with children, persons with disabilities, older persons, or young people that are not in training or education. Secondly, reskilling and upskilling of the workers that we already have, improving working conditions, which is particularly relevant, in the context of green transition, maybe construction or these kind of jobs that you have mentioned at the beginning, and of course intra-EU mobility and labor migration. So I would say that these are kind of the pieces of the puzzle to tackle the labor and skill shortages, and I think that this is true regardless the sector, regardless kind of whether it's green or not. Now more specifically, on the perspective from the green transition, you have mentioned the talent pool. Indeed, the talent pool, I can maybe explain a bit later what it is exactly, how it will function, and what kind of the governance structure. But in the context of the EU talent pool, we have conducted some analytical work to see what are the shortages that are widespread in the EU. That are common to a significant number of member states, and this led to a creation of a list, an annex to the talent pool that contains 42 occupations that are currently in shortages in the EU in a significant number of member states. And we have also included those occupations that are very relevant to the green and digital transitions and that are not currently in shortages, but that they might growing importance for the future, and where we can forecast that we will need more workers. And I mean, this list is of course public, it's annexed to the regulation, but I would just want to highlight that there is a significant portion of these 42 occupations where they have direct links to the green transition. You have mentioned welders and electricians, but also many other occupations that are not only in the construction sector, but also in engineering, for instance.
Bianca, that was extremely helpful, and I'm looking forward to delving into it a bit more later. I'm now going to move over to Nina from RWE. So from your perspective, where do you see some of these shortages arising? In any particular countries or occupations? Be interesting to hear from your perspective. Thank you. Oh, I think you might be muted, Nina. Sorry.
I thought my only issue is my internet connection today.
There we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina. Thank you for having me. So yeah, we're facing, obviously we're coming from a company that is transitioning from old energy to new energy. So we're facing a lot of like demands for green skilled workers. Demand is strongest in countries undergoing rapid energy transformations like Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and the Nordics, where energy targets are very ambitious and infrastructure is scaling fast. The UK, for example, promised to reach net zero by 2015, met by skill shortages and pipeline challenges due to geopolitical circumstances. So this is all like challenges we are facing, and where we still see we need a demand. Key pressure points for us are definitely in offshore, onshore wind, hydro energy and solar, as well as in low carbon power generation, because even though we talk a lot about offshore, onshore, we still have power plants, we still try to improve them to make them more cleaner. We see a shortage across a wide range of roles, from technician and skilled trades to engineering. People are getting permissions, project leaderships. This need spans all qualification level, not just university degrees, and especially impacts roles that are physically delivering on site. So yeah, it's quite difficult for us to meet all these challenges that we're facing due to a very, very rapidly moving industry and the skill shortages we are facing here. From an immigration perspective, obviously that we have this government approach to reduce net migration while hiring skilled people, often not always aligned with what the business needs are.
Yeah, so picking up on that, I mean, how has RWE responded to these shortages, and what do you see working, and what are some of the limitations of those approaches?
Yeah, I mean, domestic pipelines alone can't meet the demand, so immigration is a necessary lever. Doesn't mean that it's migration is not always negative to be seen. There's untapped potential in countries that are there that needs to be used. Obviously, we are hiring internationally a lot. We're getting them from other countries. We're upskilling ourselves because it's not always possible to get them in. We're still facing challenges when it comes to short-term projects or project-based immigration, because not all governments are open to short-term things. We do a lot of mobility between our companies. Obviously, we're a global acting company that's sending people from Germany to the UK, from the UK to the Netherlands. Sometimes immigration is a blocker for us. It's very difficult to hire in country, to find the right people. As an example, we recently had to do some underground cable installation. We couldn't find the right people in the UK, but we also couldn't bring them in from Germany. So it's still a challenge. We have been raising this with multiple government organizations, still working on it. But yeah, it's definitely something we need to look into further.
Thank you very much, Nina. That feeds really nicely into my next question. Over to Gemma. I mean, from your perspective, sitting within Fragomen, where do you feel like the current major policy and or legal hurdles to using immigration to alleviate some of these shortages? I mean, do you see any particular countries that are making some innovative and encouraging moves, or do you see countries going the other way?
Thanks so much, Helen. A great question. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I mean, as Helen's already alluded, and Nina mentioned as well, the UK, for example, has a legal commitment to net zero by 2050. We also need to triple our offshore wind industry workforce by 2030. But these are all challenges that also represent opportunities. And as Nina mentioned, there's a potential for huge job creation there, which is a real positive. And governments are increasingly recognising that labour migration, as part of a multimodal policy approach, can play a really important part in addressing those job shortages represented by the green transition. There are various ways in which they can do that, including making sure their standard immigration pathways work effectively. I think the European Blue Card is a good example of that, where it's relatively cheap, certainly in comparison to the UK, way of moving skills into the EU where there are those particular gaps. Engaging already present talent. Those on student visas, for example, represent the brightest and the best, and retaining them within the countries where they've studied within the EU is a really good way of sort of keeping that talent that can play a huge part in the green transition. Denmark, the Netherlands, all have really good graduate visas. In terms of direction of travel, whilst the UK currently has a graduate visa, which gives people permission to study, to remain in the UK post-study for up to 2 years or 3 years if they have a PhD, a recent UK government white paper indicated an intention to reduce that from 24 months down to 18 months. So it's an interesting direction of travel. Similarly, skills mobility partnerships are increasingly being used in the EU to basically train people in their home country to move to Europe to work here as part of those skill shortages. It also enables people skilled to remain in their home country to upskill the workforce there and ensure that you're not just sort of robbing Peter to pay Paul, really. A great example of that is the Mobilise project, where people are trained in North Africa and ultimately will move to the Netherlands to fill programs there within horticulture. So there's some great examples there. Lastly, I just comment, if I may, on the emerging global trend of complementary pathways, where skilled refugees are moved, can take advantage of labour mobility pathways into various countries around the world, including in Europe, to fill those labour gaps. Those programs are active in Ireland, Belgium, and France and Slovakia, and other countries are increasingly getting involved. So that's a global immigration trend, which can also be used to target labour shortages as part of the green transition. Thanks, Helen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gemma. And again, a really lovely segue to my next question. So over the Benjamin, we know that Germany is one of the countries really leading in engagement in this space, not only in green transition related labour migration, but labour migration overall. You have many projects piloted or underway. Could you maybe tell us a bit more about these partnerships? How are they structured? Who are you collaborating with? What role do they play? And what are some emerging lessons?
So firstly, thank you for having me. This is obviously a broad topic, and sadly enough, time is of essence here. Therefore, let me try to be quick and give an overview of what we are doing. Depending on the countries that we're working together with, we are focusing either on skills development in the countries of origin, and in other projects, we are supporting more the migration pathways. But in both opportunities that we are trying to open for people from our partner countries, we try to combine these two. So combining skills development with migration in skills development projects, or migration with skills development in the migration projects. In the end, it would be the easiest way, at least for Germany, with its very particular vocational training system and the long-standing cooperation between the private sector and the educational sector, to have this kind of combination, the dual vocational training that we have in Germany, also abroad. That is why GIZ is working now for over 50 years in supporting our partner countries in developing these educational systems. Where we are looking on from a country side, to be completely honest, for Germany, it is for development cooperation in Germany, the most important part is the partner countries' needs, because we are always looking in finding a match between what is helping developing our partner countries to the labor market shortages in Germany. And due to the fact, as you already mentioned, that Germany has such a high amount of labor shortages in different occupations on different skill levels, we can actually find cooperation potential in most of the countries all over the world. Thank you, Helen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Benjamin. And I definitely want to return to those points in a minute, but I want to go quickly back to Bianca. So we mentioned already the talent pool initiative, which, as you mentioned, the Commission has recently launched. Would you be able to share some insights from this approach and sort of your ultimate goals for this project? How do you feel like the talent pool will help address some of these green transition related shortages?
Yes, indeed. So I mentioned the talent pool, and the talent pool was the proposal for the talent pool was adopted in November 2023 by the Commission, and it was part of the broader skills and talent mobility package. And I also mentioned that it is, I'd say, one of the key deliverables in the Union of Skills and in the action plan on labor and skills shortages. So you clearly see kind of the perspective from which the talent pool is coming, and it is the perspective of attracting talent. And in this case, when I speak about talent, I don't mean only highly skilled engineers, but I mean persons from all skills levels that hold kind of the skills necessary for the labor and skill shortages that we have in the EU, from abroad to the EU. And kind of the objective of the talent pool is to be the first online platform at EU-wide level that would facilitate international recruitment by matching the vacancies of employers that are established in the EU and that have vacancies in the occupations that are currently in shortages with profiles of job seekers that reside in countries outside the EU. I remember when it was adopted, some media outlets refer to it as Tinder for Jobs. It's a matching platform. And the talent pool should be, as I said, open to all skills levels, so low, medium, and highly skilled job seekers. It is a voluntary tool, so it is up to the member states to participate, and it offers, let's say, full flexibility to adapt to their own labor market needs. So as I mentioned, we have annexed to the regulation the list of EU-wide shortage occupations that also have this strong focus on the green and digital transitions. But the member states, they have very varying labor market needs, sometimes very specific to certain regions. So when they participate in the talent pool, they can also adjust. They can add or remove some occupations to better fit the needs that they have. I think that the added value, let's say, of the talent pool is that it foresees information provision for the employers and for the job seekers. We know that this is generally a problem when I'm a third-country national trying to migrate for work in the EU to find clear information on the paperwork that I need to do, the types of procedures, working and living conditions, my rights and obligations. And the same goes for the employer, because we know that recruiting from abroad, this can be very complex, quite costly, and a lengthy process. So the talent pool aims to facilitate this by providing the relevant information and the contacts as well of the relevant national authorities. I also want to mention fair recruitment, because I think this is quite important also in the context of third-country nationals. We know that they are more vulnerable to labor exploitation, so this is an essential part of the proposal. And so the employers participating in the talent pool cannot charge recruitment fees, for instance, to the job seekers, and of course they need to be in line with the union national law when it comes to labor rights and so on. Maybe just to highlight where we are in the process, because with the talent pool, it's a proposal for regulation. This means that we are in the negotiations at the moment with the co-legislators, and we have already advanced quite a bit, so we are hoping to have this finalized probably sometime this year. And then we need some time to set up the IT platform, so we'll be fully operational in 2027, 2028. But we are already trying to advance as much as we can on the preparation, so it will be ready for the employers as soon as possible.
Wonderful, thank you so much, and really excited to see all of this development. And I mean, obviously, when developing the talent pool and any initiatives in this space, you're going to have to coordinate with a number of different entities. Labor migration for the green transition is an extremely complex policy area. It needs coherency between industrial policy and some of these green transition related goals that you mentioned, workforce strategy and engaging closely with employers, as we've already heard from Nina, and immigration policy, as some of these legal aspects that we've already heard from Gemma. So from your perspective, how do you feel like this coherency can be encouraged? Do you have some good examples of how maybe entities within the Commission are kind of working together on these goals?
Yes, indeed. So I mentioned that the talent pool is not yet fully in place, but we already have experience from similar tools and initiatives. And we see that the cooperation is really essential, especially between the migration and employment authorities. That is not always so, let's say, automatic. We often work in silos. And for this, for instance, the Commission has established a labor migration platform where we meet regularly with the migration and the labor authorities from member states and with social partners to discuss, let's say, topic of common interest. And many of these topics are, of course, in the area of labor migration and also prevention of, let's say, exploitation and fair recruitment. So I feel that by bringing all the different players to the table, this is probably the best approach to ensure, a wide buy-in from the stakeholders. From the talent pool specifically, I think what will be crucial for its success is the buy-in from the member states, because this is a voluntary tool. And if we want to create this European brand and to attract people to Europe because this is the place that you want to live, work in, and raise your children, there needs to be some economies of scale. So we need to have sufficient number of member states that want to go in this direction. And the same goes for companies, as of course, this needs to be a user-friendly tool that makes life easier for the companies. So the key is to think about kind of the user or the customer for this and to make the journey as easy as possible. But I also want to talk a bit about barriers that are not linked necessarily to the tool itself, but to the overall migration and recruitment procedures. And we hear this a lot from the employers, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, that they have issues with the recognition of qualifications, with the time needed to get the permits, to conduct the time it takes to conduct labor market tests, and the cost. I recently heard from German authorities that one worker from abroad can cost up to 12,000 euros for a regular company. So we know that there is need to support particularly the smaller companies that do not have HR units and many lawyers that can help them with this process. And so there needs to be targeted support to these smaller companies to particularly support them when they are uncertain about whether this person will be any good in what they are doing, about their language abilities, the quality of the worker, and how to integrate the company. So that is why I think the talent pool can help, because it helps you find the right person when you do not have maybe necessarily a huge HR department to do this.
Yes, that's a really good point. And maybe Nina or Gemma will have something to say about that in our final round. But I just want to quickly, before that, turn back to Benjamin, harking back to something you mentioned in my last question to you about cooperation with origin countries. Obviously, from the Centre for Global Development's perspective, we want to make sure that labour migration benefits both countries of origin and destination. So in your collaboration with these countries, what green transition related goals do these countries have, and how do they see the role of labour migration in meeting these goals? I mean, how are you collaborating to help advance their policy objectives and development objectives as well as Germany's?
So thank you for the question. In general, I would say we focus strongly on skills development in our partner countries and trying to help them develop their vocational training system to being fit to meet the skills demands, be it for new green jobs or green skills in old jobs. That makes it very much, it is such an important issue due to the fact that in a lot of our partner countries, these countries are facing demographic change, and soon they will not be able to send skilled workers abroad to work on a global scale, but they need the workers in their countries themselves to make better use of the human capital that they have, and be more productive in the companies that are working from these countries. And that is something where the interest of our partner countries, the businesses in our partner countries, and our interests align, while at the same time the interests of the German industry connects to this via the idea that in these cases, if we are focusing on the green skill, on the needs of green skills in our partner countries, these are the same skills that are needed in Germany, or in German companies, and therefore, if we alleviate these skill levels, then it is possible for people to freely, or more or less freely, obviously there are legal regulations to it, to have more freedom in in choosing countries where they want to work, because having an employment and having the right skill set are the preconditions to migrate safe, orderly, and regular into a decent work, and that is something that we want to support with this.
I completely agree. I mean, the green transition should be a policy goal for every country around the world, and creating a workforce that is a bit more mobile, that has the skills they can deploy in different countries, I think has to be part of the discussion going forward. So final round before we move on to the Q&A. I'm delighted to see that we already have some questions through. Please feel free to send through some more. But final round, and I have the same question for all four of our speakers. What lessons or suggestions do you have for government, implementers, employers, organizations who are interested in developing new green skill partnerships, pairing training and migration? So firstly, I'm going to come to Nina, and then Gemma, Bianca, and Benjamin. Nina, over to you.
I think it's very important to work closely with the businesses and see what the actual needs are. I think needs differ from company to company. Obviously, we are a globally acting company. We have recruitment teams, we have HR teams, immigration teams that make it very easy to hire, to recruit. I think a big focus should also be on small organizations that may not have the capabilities that we have. I think the politics also need to focus a lot on them. In addition, I think it's very important to look into like what my previous speakers also mentioned, short-term mobility, how we can move people around without increasing net migration, which is always an issue for politics. I think if we all work together, it should be possible to help with the green transition around Europe.
Wonderful, thank you. Gemma.
Yeah, thanks so much, Helen. Great question. I very much agree with what Nina just said. I think in addition, for employers, thinking strategically about the skills that you already have, how those can be upskilled or reskilled, so sort of a skills audit, if you will, to best future-proof the business moving forwards. For governments, I think there's a great deal of positive steps that have already been taken, but there's a great many additional elements that can come to play. Green skills specific visas or permits, I think, would be a really important part of their arsenal. Obviously not European, but looking further afield, for example, the UAE has a visa which offers 10-year residence after exceptional contributions to environmental or sustainable efforts. So it's a green visa, rather confusingly referred to as the blue visa. But it's just an example that other countries could perhaps seize upon. I would also say that skills recognition is quite an awkward part of this. It's not specific to green transition, but it does play into that, where people have brilliant skills from their home country, but having those recognised in country of destination can prove to be really difficult. There are various tech opportunities available to help resolve that, but it's an important element on which countries would have to be really intentional to make sure any specific green transition visas do operate effectively. Lastly, I think I would just say that migrant worker protection mechanisms are incredibly important, and just really important that governments are intentional around that and make that a fundamental building block of any new or adapted migration pathway. Thank you.
I completely agree. On to Bianca.
Yes, I think I would just recall a principle I already mentioned on the cooperation and kind of breaking the silos between the different stakeholders. So mostly between the migration and employment authorities, governments, but also social partners, the chambers of commerce, the employers, and NGOs that are active in the integration of migrant population. I think it's very important that we all work together, because we talked a lot about labor shortages and about job vacancies and workers, but I mean, we speak about people as well that come, that often relocate their lives, they come with their families, and I think that we need to have this broader approach to generally integration, not only looking from the lens of the labor market and getting the job, but also about thinking, getting adequate housing, having the ability to integrate properly in the society, and also to give opportunities to the family members that come along. So I can echo the references to recognition of qualifications, also of those that come with the workers, their spouses, and so on. I think that this is also important to ensure that this is not only about jobs, but also about the general kind of European quality of life, as we call it, for those migrant workers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bianca. And lastly, over to Benjamin.
Thank you very much. I think most of it was already said by my esteemed colleagues who spoke before me, but let me emphasize on a couple of things and be very short about it. I think expectation management is very important, and expectation management in the direction of the businesses, the countries of origin, the countries of destination, and the migrants themselves. That is very much important when we want to set up projects dealing with the topic of labor migration and the green transition. Therefore, we have to include private businesses and the needs of the countries of origin and destination from the beginning. Yet, we have to be sure that or aware of the fact that projects will never be able to reach the numbers of skilled workers that are necessary for the green transition globally. Therefore, supporting individual migration via the trailblazer function of projects, that is the way to go forward. Just two quick notes on challenges maybe that people should have in mind. One, I already said, demographic change is not only happening in Europe and the OECD donor countries, but it is also happening all around the world, apart from sub-Saharan Africa, which will take a little bit longer till demographic change is kicking in there. That is something we have to keep in mind, that changes the dynamic of global migration. And the second challenge that we have to keep in mind, that the green transition, due to its needs for rare earths, will also have a higher demand on rare earth mining, and therefore that will be a big topic, to have sustainable mining sites who are following up on decent work and green ideas. Thank you.
Really fascinating, Benjamin. And thank you again to all of our speakers for their thoughts. Really looking forward to delving into these topics more with you in the Q&A and future community of practice meetings. So I'm now going to pass over to Marius, who will be leading our Q&A session. And please do send through more questions. Really looking forward to hearing from you all. Over to Marius.
Thank you very much, Helen, and a warm welcome from my side as well. We're delighted to be able to cooperate with the Center for Global Development for this very important topic and in this webinar. We have received a couple of questions and I'm trying to sort them a bit. I think I would like to start again, just focus briefly on the talent pool. I think there's a range of questions which kind of ask where I would maybe put it, where is the talent pool at the moment and where should it be at some end point? That it also includes the question how much, let's say, support function, service function for individuals and employers will be or are supposed to be part of the talent pool. Maybe, Bianca, you can elaborate very briefly on where we are with the talent pool in this regard.
Yes, so as I mentioned, the talent pool was the proposal for the regulation was adopted by the Commission in November 2023. And now we are in the negotiations between the co-legislators, so we should be able to have a stable regulation probably by the end of this year, hopefully. And I noticed the question on the information provision. So the short answer is yes. This is part of the talent pool. And I think it is absolutely essential part of the talent pool, because when you are coming to Europe, it can be quite tricky to understand the different national systems. Every member state has a bit different procedures. And the talent pool should include a section that provides information easily. It should be easily accessible and include information about the recruitment and immigration procedures, about the recognition of qualifications and validation of skills, about your rights and obligations, and also information about any redress mechanisms. Because of course, the talent pool needs to include as well a complaint mechanism in case there is any breach, for instance, by the employer of the recruitment principles, so that the job seeker can find easily information on where to, submit a complaint and deal with the situation. So that would be kind of the longer answer to the question.
And maybe just a follow-up question. You mentioned during one of your answers that you see a particular need to support SMEs. Now there's a question which just right out asks whether the EU does consider to give grants to support SMEs with their foreign hiring or any other support. Anything you see on the horizon there?
Yes, I mean the focus for SMEs. I mean there's a lot of different kind of grants and programs for SMEs that will not kind of go into detail now. But of course, SMEs can also apply for different European funding and in different areas. When it comes to specifically facilitating the labor migration, so of course talent pool is one of the kind of obvious tools that can support smaller companies, because the employer can go through their national contact point, which could be potentially a public employment service that they usually contact already, and then fairly easily publish their vacancy and start look for somebody, for job seekers from abroad. But there are also other initiatives that I have not necessarily mentioned today that I can briefly mention, is the talent partnerships. So these are mutually beneficial agreements between the EU and partner countries that also include a component on the skills development and then help support the labor mobility of workers that have been trained abroad in partner countries to the EU. And of course, employers can participate in this if it's available in their country. And the Union of Skills that I have mentioned earlier also includes the concept of multi-purpose legal gateway offices, where the job seekers could be as well advised or supported in their project of labor migration to the EU. And here there's also kind of benefit for the company that these offices would help, let's say, raise awareness about the ways how to get to the EU, in which sectors the person could apply. They can also help potentially the job seeker once the talent is available to create their profile and so on. So there are many kind of different initiatives that create this kind of comprehensive approach to support labor migration, and the SMEs are always at the core of the creation of these initiatives.
No, you just mentioned migration partnerships, and that gives me a good segue to address Benjamin. There have been a couple of questions focusing more on the country of origin. So one audience member wanted to know, is it appropriate to link like immigration options in the green skills context with agreements which also speak about other elements or illegal element of immigration or illegal migration, addressing those as well? And then maybe just a bit further, just wrapping two questions together. There is this employer's pays principle, and someone wants to know, is it still good, or does it sometimes maybe hinder immigration?
So, Marius, I'm not sure if I should be happy with you asking me the first question, because it is obviously GIZ as a service agency for the German government is following the rules and the goals of the German government as its main donor agency, as its main donor. Therefore, I personally have an opinion how much sense it makes to combine the questions of qualification with other topics to lever political results. I would say, as far as I know, the scientific proof of really making a difference in using development cooperation or skills migration projects to reach other political goals, it is very slim. So my understanding of the scientific results of this question is a little bit that I don't see that it really works, but that's my understanding of it. The employer pays principle, I think, is still very valid. In the end, I don't think that that is the challenge that most companies have, as far as I talk to companies. Actually, what one of my colleagues just said, the SMEs have problem due to the fact that in the SMEs there is not enough they have no big HR departments. They have no big legal team. They have not the necessary back office structures to support labor migration. Therefore, that is the challenge for them, not the employer pays principle. Also, we have to see that in different areas, it can make sense to have a buy-in from the employee into the skills development, which is not meaning that it is against the employer pays principle, but in certain situations, it makes sense to have a financial contribution to skills development by the potential employee. But that is something that has to be done on an individual basis and on the question of which partner country we are talking about and which sector, because that can make sense in IT sector or in different sectors which are with a high demand and high pay. In other sectors, it might not make that much sense. So it is a yes, employer pays principle with a maybe there needs to be some further development in the in how we work with it.
And Benjamin, you mentioned it earlier. Organizations like the GIZ have played the role of a trailblazer to open some markets, test out ideas and concepts when it comes to migration cooperation and skills partnerships. Now, one audience member wants to know what role do you see for private recruitment companies in addressing the skills gap?
Obviously, it's an enormous role that they are playing, and they should play that. What we are doing as a development actor is we are looking at the needs of the partner country. But as I mentioned before, the general need of the labor market in Germany, for example, or in Europe, can never be met by our projects. That's not our goal. That's not what we are here for. Therefore, working together with recruitment agencies, supporting our partner countries in setting up rules and regulations that make sure that migrants are migrating safe, orderly, and regular along the migratory routes and into decent work. That is something we support. And I know of a lot of recruitment agencies who are supporting that as well. Nevertheless, there are, generally speaking, certain legal challenges for recruitment agencies, at least in Germany, when it comes to temp work and migration. But that is a different topic, which I think would go outside of the scope of this workshop.
Bringing the question of talent back into a country's, or in that particular question, a company's own talent pool. There's a question, Nina, for RWE. Does RWE train its current staff to be ready for the green transition as well? I think it's meant like, yeah, sorry, please go ahead.
I thought it's what we do have graduate programs for all different kind of opcodes we have within RWE. We have them for our trade department, we have them for hydrogen, we have them for our power plant, we have them for offshore. So we do have big cohorts of graduates coming in. Our graduates are able to rotate within the time that they're being with us. So we're moving them from different countries as well, again, using whatever immigration allows us to use. And we normally only hire as much as we can also place. So we are hiring and training for our own needs. However, sometimes we still face situations where we need someone ASAP for maintenance work. We have higher skilled people in one country, but not in the other. So sometimes it gets more difficult because yes, we do train, but it takes time, it takes investment. We're a big company, we can do that. Smaller companies can't. It's just too expensive and just need a lot of logistics as well.
And there's another question addressed to you personally or to RWE. Is RWE collaborating with their partner countries to support the green transition? Are they implementing their own migration partnership? I think you already opened that topic. Maybe you want to add a couple of sentences.
It is more like an RWE internal graduate program. However, we are in exchanging, we are part of unions, we are part of the wider green transition organizations. We have policy teams that work together with governments to see how we can support and train. We do hire people from other organizations. Obviously, sometimes people from our organization go to other organizations, which is fine. I think we use each other. There is no really government program that we use with the government or send us people that we then train when they go somewhere else. We do, but we also have a lot of like training opportunities for apprentices, vocational trainings, trying to give them the same opportunities as we have for graduates with a higher degree. So yeah, it's very internal. However, we do have a lot of exchange with other organizations in the same sector.
And Nina, there's another question which I can imagine plays a role in an organization as large as RWE is as well. An audience member wants to know what methodologies have proven most effective in accurately assessing future skills needs for the green transition. Maybe, I mean, I'm just assuming an organization as large as RWE, you kind of need to know what's going to be needed, not only right now, but ideally also in the near future.
That is correct. And I mean, we're talking about like building pipelines, but building a vessel, but obviously it's a very long process, right? We go through the submission, we try to apply for whatever the government is writing out. Then we have project teams going underground, like from when we got the approval to be allowed to build a vessel until we can actually build the vessel, it takes years. So we need to design our port. How do we send people on the ships to the vessels? What is required? So it's not just like today we know, next week we need 10 people. It's really, really long-term planning based on the projects we're having, and they have a long-term time that they need to be planned and to put in place. So yeah, nothing we do is really short notice. That's why our graduation programs are also like 2-year programs. They're not just like 6 months and they're good to go. So they're slowly being introduced to different kind of areas to be able to at some point then actually be helpful in these projects.
Nina, maybe a question to you as well. I think it's asked in a more broad manner, but could be interesting to see how you see it for RWE. There's a question regarding which countries of origin are actually the most important ones to for the green skills in Europe?
I think it's a very good question. I mean, we see people come from all over the world because it's a very hot graduation topic. People like to be involved in green transition. We have a lot of people from the Western countries that want to be involved in green transition. I must say we don't have too many people coming from the African countries. It's very difficult for our recruiting teams to hire from these countries. So they tend to hire from what they know. But yeah, I would say our population is quite international. We have obviously a lot of people come from India. We have people coming from China, from Russia. Having said that, we are traditionally very like European focused. So our main population still remains within Europe. But yeah, I think green and green transition and anything within renewables is very popular within the younger generation. So we see more and more international people coming in. And we're benefiting from their knowledge and where they're coming from.
And Gemma, maybe you can also share your thoughts and what you see in the market when it comes to the question, what kind of countries we're actually talking about as countries of origin when it comes to the green skills, the technical jobs that we have on hand here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Marius. And it's a great question. I think, as Nina said, there's a range of countries that act as sort of a source or host countries from which people move to destination areas such as the EU. I think amongst the examples already given, India is a key one. It's a government that's really looking to increase its immigration footprint globally, and it's really broad young population, incredibly educated, lots of graduates. So I think that's one prime example of a source country with huge potential. And I mentioned earlier, the fact that skills come from various parts of the global population, including the displaced population. If we look at countries like Colombia, for example, they have a very large displaced community from Venezuela. And amongst that, again, very young population of people with a huge amount of skills. So the skills partnerships, which have been alluded to already, for people with Spanish language skills that are primed to move into Spain with some upskilling in their host country. So I think looking at that, those displaced communities worldwide, as I said, it's a growing immigration trend, and one to which governments are incredibly receptive. So that's just another sort of talent stream that remains untapped but has huge potential for the green transition. Thank you.
And Gemma, another question, maybe just very quickly, on the basis or on the example of the UK, there was a question also, what do countries do to just avoid discrimination, labor exploitation? Of course, this is always a thing when it comes to migration. Maybe it's possible for you to just give us a few sentences. I'm sure the UK, when in its work permit process, has a review process which makes sure, for example, salaries are at par with what they should be and things like that. Maybe if you can just briefly share some thoughts from the UK here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And the UK is a really good example because that's something the government take incredibly seriously. Through our sponsored work permit routes, there are indeed minimum salary levels that need to be met, and the government is very hot on reviewing those both in advance of visas being granted and once they've been granted by way of audits. They also check information with other government departments, such as the Department of Work and Pensions, to see how much people are paying in national insurance or pension contributions to make sure those minimum salaries levels are actually being met. And just by way of very brief example, the UK has slightly vexed history with some visa types, such as seasonal agricultural worker visas, which are used as to address acute short-term labour shortages within the UK market. Those have had issues with exploitation in the past, so the UK has had various reviews into that to introduce checks and balances, which look to strengthen workers' rights and try to stop those exploitative behaviours taking place. So it's certainly something the UK government has taken steps to address previously and is very much front of mind of their processes moving forwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. I hope I have done an okay job to wrap some questions together to get as many of them answered. There are some questions which may have remained unaddressed, but I believe most of the topics that we found in the questions we were able to address in the last 20 minutes. Thank you very much, esteemed speakers, for sharing further knowledge here. Before we close, I just want to encourage everyone to dig into the wealth of documents, thoughts, and knowledge which you find on the website of the Center for Global Development. They have done an amazing job doing very in-depth research regarding skills and green skills gaps around the world. You may also want to check out the Fragomen Green Skills series of blogs and documents where we address global green skills questions as well. With that, I'm just stopping or finishing on a huge thank you for everyone joining. Thank you for our speakers, and thank you very much, Center for Global Development and Helen, for bringing us together here. Thank you very much.